welcome to the Pewtercast. This is the tour of our off-season, starting right now. I am Brent Allen, your host, joined as always by my co-host, Ren Daxt. Ren, how we doing here, kicking off the off-season here at the Pewtercast?
We're kicking this pig. We're kicking this pig off.
Are we doing that one again? Are we going back to that one?
Hey, it's a goodie, apparently. Apparently to you, it's one of the best comedies ever made. That's not true. You didn't say that. Yeah, we were sort of discussing how we're going to do this. And, there was a lot of information that's come out of One Buck since, our final game. So sure. I guess this is our first. This is sort of a Buck in the News / first off-season pod. So, yeah. Lots of stuff to talk about.
Yeah. You and I certainly were talking about how we're going to do this offseason. There's been lots of questions about how the offseason is going to work for us. And, as the show continues to evolve and to continue to grow, we kind of landed in this idea that effectively this is going to be a lot like our Buck in the News show. We're going to keep tabs on what's going on with the team, particularly with the roster and what's going to happen, because this is the time when we're making roster moves, these next bunch of months. We'll certainly address any of the news bits that come out concerning the Buccaneers. And then we're going to wrap up with an injury report. Wait, no, probably not that last part.
No. We are going to guess who's going to be on the inactive list.
Nope. Probably won't be doing that one either. But we may add a little something extra to the end, maybe not. It just kind of depends. Now, tonight, Ren, we were actually supposed to add a little something to the end of this because we have a little thing coming out here called the Pewtercast Awards Show, where we will be setting it out there for the fans. They'll be able to vote. They can go vote on their favorite player in each category. There are things like Offensive Player of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year. There'll be Clutch Player of the Year, Off the Bench Player of the Year, Rookie of the Year, a whole bunch. There's 13 different categories. Each winner of each category will actually receive a little thing that you and I have come to call and love. It's cute, I think is the best word. It's called a mini Lombardi. It's an actual trophy. Has their names engraved on it. And some of them will go to players. Some of them will go to various members of the media or other podcasters, other fans throughout those 13. So we were going to talk about all the nominations, but unfortunately, the site that we've put up the voting category for is down for maintenance as we're recording this. Now, as our listeners are listening to this, it will be off maintenance. So here's how you can go vote, because voting as you're listening to this is now live. You guys can go. All you have to do, go to our Twitter page. It's twitter.com/thepewtercast. The very first tweet, we'll pin it to the very top of the page, and it'll stay there for as long as voting is open. You can click on that link. It'll take you to the voting page, and you can go ahead and vote for who you think should win the Pewtercast award for those 13 categories. And be sure to let your voice be heard. I think people might be able to vote more than once if they care to go do that.
Okay.
Should be kind of fun. I'm not really sure, but we'll figure that out. But so we're not going to be able to go over the nominations tonight because honestly, it's all there. I didn't write it down anywhere else, which is my bad. But it'll be there. So you guys go check that out. As you're listening to this, it is live. So go for it. Go do that. And with that, Ren, why don't we go ahead and just jump into it? Because as you mentioned, there is a lot of news that has come out here in just this first week of the offseason for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And I probably should get this little soundbite, but as you said, let's kick this pig. Let's see here. All right, so starting off, we are going to look at the transactions that have happened. Now, Buccaneers.com is not updating their transactions list anymore, and that's okay. But we do know that the Bucs signed 8 players to futures contracts. That's about all that they can do right now. Negotiations for new free agents doesn't begin until March 12th, so we're not going to know who they're going to go after in free agency until then. And honestly, we're not going to know who they're going to get rid of. So this is kind of what we're just going to have to settle for. So, Ren, 8 people to futures contracts. Mm-hmm. You kind of did a little bit of research. You know some of these guys. Starting off, we have a couple of names that are familiar to us. Probably the two most familiar are cornerback Maurice Fleming and fullback Austin Johnson, both who were with us through last preseason, through camp.
Yeah, Maurice Fleming, as listeners will remember, is the guy who was sort of featured on Hard Knocks. He was there early in the morning, pulling out some exercise equipment, drill equipment, like 6:30 in the morning, and Cutter could see him out there. And he sort of had a little storyline. He's the one who blew out his knee, I think, in the Jacksonville game. And you could hear him talking like, man, he's like, I got to stay in here. This is my shot. Then after the game, he found out that he had to have surgery. So apparently he's had surgery, and the Bucs, liked him enough, and they brought him back. They signed him to a futures contract. So, hard work for him paid off. He definitely made an impression the short time he was here. Austin Johnson is sort of Alan Cross. He's the fullback / tight end, wears like a 40 number. I don't know what it was, 44, 47, whatever. And he plays basically that fullback position that's going to catch the ball, maybe 5 times a year. The H-back, mostly he's in there for blocking. And under the when they do their drills and under the position on the official roster on Buccaneers.com, it'll say tight end next to his name.
Right.
But really he's playing, like I said, that Luke Stocker used to play, Alan Cross, that type of deal, where it's really just an H-back.
All right. So after those guys, we have a couple of wide receivers that we've signed. Jake Lampman, who has been on the practice squad this past year, on and off the practice squad, I think, a little bit. And then Devin Lucian? I'm not quite sure how to pronounce his name. What do you know about these guys?
Not much. Lampman, like you said, he's sort of been hanging around the practice squad a little bit this year. He was with the Saints practice squad last year, got in, moved up, bumped up to the active roster, got in a few games, but didn't record any stats. And then Devin Lucian, I'm going with, he was actually drafted by the Pats last year. In the 7th round. Obviously didn't stick around, so one of, I believe, 2 players that were actually drafted last year, the Bucs end up signing to futures contracts, and he would be the first.
Now, I'm going to save him. All right, we had a trio of offensive linemen, Ren, and we certainly know the help that our offensive line needs. We had 2 tackles, Givens Price and Brad Seaton, and then a guard, Avery Young, whom we also signed to futures contracts. Anything on these guys?
Price has been banging around the league a little bit. He's been with the Cards. He's been with the Skins. He actually got called up for 1 game. And these next 2 guys are really interesting. Mostly, as far as Brad Seaton's concerned, is his size. He's 6'7", 310 pounds. He was the other player that was drafted last year. The Titans drafted him. He's been with the Bucs practice squad a little bit at the end of this year, past couple of weeks when they had to move all those guys up. And I'd like to say all those players they moved up are now safe, such as like the Bobo Wilsons and the Riley Bullows. They're under contract next year.
Right.
So if you bring them up with 3 games or less, that doesn't accrue to an NFL year, so against their practice squad eligibility, and you also get to they're protected. Because they're on your roster,
right?
So no one could sign them to futures contracts. So that was a cool move as they brought those guys up. There's a few more players they brought up. So they're officially on the Buccaneers. So if you're worried about Bobo Wilson or Riley Bullough signing somewhere as a futures contract, don't worry about it because they're on the team. Avery Young, he's 6'6", big guy as well. He played at Auburn, started 3 years there, and he got injured in his pro day. So he ended up going on the Saints non-football injury list for a whole year. And then the Saints let him go. The Dolphins picked him up a little bit this year. Picked him up this year, hung around there for a little while, and then he's a guy that also the Bucs picked up around week 16, week 17 has been hanging around the practice squad. So lots of guys that were on the practice squad at the end of the year, they're re-signing to these future contracts.
All right. I'm also looking at a couple of guys. It looks like we also signed them to some futures contracts before this whole thing got going. Isaiah Johnson and Michael Liedtke. Looks like they were signed to futures contracts back like immediately after the season ended. These 8 guys were signed on Wednesday. Looks like these guys might have been signed like Monday or Tuesday. So we actually have had 10 people signed to this. There is one more guy that I want to talk about, and I'm going to butcher his last name.
Good.
But he has been on the team all year long, this whole past year. He's a linebacker. His name is Eric.
You got it. Eric, good job.
I'm just going to go with that. Eric. Eric Inzoicha. This is the guy from Germany. And he went to the University of Wyoming, was with the team. He's part of this international exchange student program that they have in the NFL, but they signed him to a futures contract. Ren, do we know anything? I know he's been with the team this whole time.
Right.
Outside of just, hey, we have this player from Germany who's kind of acting like a 91st man or a 64th person, doesn't really count against our regular stuff. Do we know anything about him from this past year of how he's developed? Is he going to actually count towards the limits this year, or?
I guess that'd be the question. As far as getting pulled up from the practice squad, never did. I mean, not a peep from that guy. As far as anything, like you said, I think there was 10 NFL teams that got these international players. Yes, he played college ball, University of Wyoming in the States, but he was born in Germany. And yeah, you hadn't heard anything about him. But that is the question. Now that we signed him to a futures contract, was that just a 1-year thing, or now is he, does he get to count as the 11th man on the practice squad that, doesn't count against, or, the 91st guy on the roster? And like you said, I don't know. And I couldn't find really any information on it, but I'm sure that'll all get worked out as OTAs and training camp starts to roll along. As of now, he's just on the team.
Right. It kind of goes, Ren, it makes me think of you kind of had a little proposal earlier this year about the NFL. It's time for them to get a farm league, and it would be interesting, to me, this would be the time of year that we'd want to see that happen. Maybe a limited season, a 4-game, maybe 5-game season that goes from, I don't know, January, February, maybe March up to, say maybe through May or April. Kind of in high school, I was thinking about like spring football, which I think usually only went for about 3 or 4 weeks. Kind of a similar thing like that. It'd be interesting to see some of these guys actually play. So, yeah, it should be very, very interesting. With that could be very interesting. It'll be interesting to see, to me, I think, what happens with him as the year goes forward. But that's what we have as far as
the most interesting thing with him is going to be his status.
Yeah. Is
he
did
he do good enough to? Are they keeping him because he could he's on the 90-man roster,
right?
Or he's just an exempt again,
right? Could we? I mean, are we just being nice and letting some guy come play with us, or is this guy really a legit football player that could see some time, contributing in the NFL? So, yeah, I'd like to see it one way or the other. So, all right, well, that is it as far as those guys are concerned. So let's move over. Ren, there were quite a few kind of headlines that came out this week concerning the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And the first one I'm going to go to sort of concerns the Buccaneers, but kind of doesn't. Bucs fans have certainly been vocal about this particular thing. As we all know, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are rolling with Dirk Cutter as their head coach going into next season. John Gruden will not be coming to Tampa Bay, but that is because the news is John Gruden is actually going to Oakland. It was rumored for about 3 days, and now it looks like it's no longer a rumor. He's going to be heading to Oakland, a 10-year contract worth about $100 million. Ren, I don't really know what all we should say about this, but I'll toss it to you first, man. What do you think about this?
Don't care.
Yeah.
And I've seen a lot of people out there on Bucs Twitter yelling at the Glazers. I've seen it, but I've seen more praising the Glazers, sort of like no coach is worth that much. Like I don't want 10 years, $100 million. And what you have to think about also is coaches' contracts are guaranteed.
Right.
So if, say, after 6 years, Gruden and the Raiders part ways, they still owe him $40 million. Like, he's getting $100 million no matter what.
Right.
As soon as, Tuesday came out today, the day we were recording, Friday night, that, Tuesday is the day. They're going to come out and they're going to introduce him. And like you said, 10 years, $100 million is expected as the contract. I'm not sure how that I'm not sure we could go to find coaches' salaries, to be honest, on the internet.
It's hard. Greg Allman had said something about Dirk Cutter and Jason Light's contracts and Mike Smith's contracts, and he said players' contracts are real easy. It's really hard for us to find information on coaching contracts. Right.
So maybe we'll never know if that's true or not. And once again, back to it, who cares? I remember when Magic Johnson contracted the HIV virus and had to, quote unquote, retire from the Lakers. And after he left, the Lakers were pretty bad. They were terrible. Not like they're any better now, but they did go through a spurt where they won some championships after him. But for 3 or 4 years, it felt like everything the Lakers did had to be okay with Magic Johnson. Like, they had to run it through him. Well, how Magic going to feel about this? And we were sitting around talking about it, and someone just goes, the Los Angeles Lakers just have to get over Magic Johnson. He doesn't play for the team anymore. Yes, it was unfortunate how he left early, and there was so much, unused potential there maybe, but he's gone. Like, it in your decision making as an organization and as a fan base, he's gone. He's not part of the Lakers. And that's sort of how I feel about John Gruden. It's just like, especially today when it came out that it was it's going to be announced Tuesday that he's going to accept the Oakland job. It's like it's a non-factor to me. It really is. I do not care. He's not my coach, and that's it. Okay, see you later. Sure. Good luck. Not really.
Right. I was going to say that, to me, and I hate to say this because I'm not a guy that wishes ill on anybody, but I really hope John Gruden goes out there and falls flat on his face. In Oakland / Las Vegas, wherever he's going to be. And if for no other reason, because my God, if he goes out there and he does really well, which he might not. I don't know. That's the thing. We keep talking about John Gruden as if he's a guaranteed lock to win and take all these teams to the Super Bowl, and he's not.
He's not.
He's a good coach.
Look at the record he had with us.
Sure. He's got a lot of energy, and, he's potentially going to come back with a little bit more seasoning to him, which is going to be a good thing, sure. Or at least we assume it's going to be a good thing. But there's no guarantee of this guy winning. There's no guarantee that he's gonna walk in and just march his teams to the Super Bowl. Now, if he does, holy hell, and it just, the thing is this news is all of 48 hours old, of at least it being moving from rumor to no, this is actually happening. And I'm already sick of seeing Bucs fans and hearing Bucs fans talk about, oh, well, the Glazers couldn't get it done. The Glazers, weren't willing to pay what it took to win. The Glazers weren't, Oakland just outbid them. And as you mentioned, there's a lot that are just saying, yeah, there's no coach worth that. No, good on them to not. But if he goes out there and he does win, then the back, it's going to be, it's going to be like is a lot like we've heard about Calais Campbell this year.
Oh yeah.
Only magnify that, right? Calais Campbell, he's paying him a lot of money. Well, he goes out and you know what? I hope Jacksonville goes to the Super Bowl this year. This is my hometown. I don't have a personal affinity for them, but there's no other team that I care about in the playoffs right now. So sure, why not? But if he comes in and he's had a monster year this year, and helping lead Jacksonville to the playoffs, and potentially could go to the Super Bowl, worth every penny. Do you think Shad Khan is worried about any penny that he's paid to Calais Campbell? No,
Shad Khan.
He's the owner, the owner here.
I'm kidding.
In Jacksonville. Good guy, by the way.
Him.
Yeah, actually, really good guy. Really great for the community. Funny story about him. Remind me to tell you off air, Ren. But anyway, he, he's worth every penny of it. And it's going to be that same thing if John Gruden goes out to Oakland and has success, particularly in his first year or his second year, or, but
as long as the Bucs are winning, it'll be fine.
Yeah.
As soon as, if ever, the Bucs drop, one game below the record, whatever Oakland/Vegas is doing at the time, that's when it's going to come out.
Mm-hmm.
If John Gruden next year is 6-4 and the Bucs are 7-3, no one's going to say anything. But as soon as the record, and it may even start week 1, the Raiders go 1-0 and the Bucs go 0-1. But yeah, I've just learned to sort of about with. I've reserved myself that every time Jameis has a, 3-turnover, 2-turnover game that I'm going to see on Twitter about how he sucks, I've just reserved myself to that. That's going to happen his whole career.
Sure.
And then so now I'm sort of steeling myself against this told you so, Buck fans. Gruden was the guy talk. So, I mean, their defense isn't any good out there. They got they got some good young players, but not very many. But they definitely don't have 2 Hall of Famers with a Hall of Fame finalist and 2 other guys that made the top 25 on that defense, or ever going to be.
Right.
like Gruden did when he showed up here. So, yeah, like I said, I don't care. I just don't care anymore.
Very true. Yeah. So. All right, well, moving on to that, Ren, you mentioned just a moment ago the Hall of Fame. We had a little bit of Hall of Fame news that came out this week concerning the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 2 of them in particular. John Lynch, once again, being named as a Hall of Fame finalist, so kudos to John. Rondé Barber, however, and Simeon Rice, but more so Rondé Barber, I think, was a surprise, got snubbed. It was not named as a finalist. I don't know if it's snubbed or not. I'm not sure if that's the right word, but did not make it in. And Ira Kaufman on his podcast had a story about how somebody was calling around all the different Hall of Fame voters and trying to convince them to put in this other guy who's, I guess, in his last year of eligibility or something.
Emerson Walls.
Yeah, over Rondé Barber. And, just talking about the politics and how that kind of stuff works. So I'll get your thoughts on this one, Ren. John Lynch in, Rondé out.
I'm not shocked by either. John Lynch, I hope he makes it this year. If he doesn't make this year, Jesus, doesn't really bode well for Ira. And Rondé Barber not making it. And this is sort of what started that quote unquote feud during the offseason last year when Scott Reynolds wrote that article about Rondé is a very unique set of skill set. All these guys, all these cornerbacks that are in the Hall of Fame, none of them played slot corner. It didn't really exist when most of these guys, got into the Hall of Fame as cornerbacks. And Rondé Barber is the first guy to excel at a position that didn't really exist 20 years ago. So where do you rank him among the greats that, but basically the category has only been around for 20 years? I guess he was the best at it. So does that mean you put him in now? It's a unique argument for him. I think it's going to take a little longer than most people hope for. I do think he will get in, sort of as his story gets around. Because, let's face it, we know Buccaneers football, right? We know Rondé Barber. Do I know anything about Eagles football? No. Do I know anything about Seattle football? No. So these guys that are Hall of Fame voters for all these teams just really don't know a lot about Rondé Barber. And it's going to take a few years for them to be like, oh, okay, I see. And then to get there. So Simeon Rice, I don't know why people just don't like him. I don't know if he was bad with the media or, he was just flippant or didn't care, or if this is a grudge, or there's just other guys who want to get before him. I don't know. His stats look good. They stack up against it. But like you talked about the politics, of it, and how Ira told that story about he said it was Emerson Wall's old agent or is his agent or used to be his agent, called every single Hall of Fame voter and, gave sort of reasons why Emerson Walls. And then, to end off the conversation was, well, if Emerson doesn't get in this year, then he has to go to the senior committee or whatever they call it, old people pool. And Rondé Barber's got 19 more years. Now, one, that sucks for us and Rondé. Two, why isn't Ira doing stuff like that? Like, I don't, and I'm not saying I don't know anything about the process.
Sure.
I'm sure it's highly political. We've had sort of conversation on the air about saying that it needs to be changed. It seems like a good old boy network. And, the more you hear about it, the more you're like, well, that doesn't seem right, or that stinks, or that sounds corrupt. But if it is the game, Ira was going around, and not that I'm yelling at him, but Ira was going around all last offseason talking about, hey, I got Brooks in, I got Sapson. They call me the closer. They said I should do all the presentations because I'm so entertaining. Well, then he went over, and now he's 0 for 4 with Lynch, and some guy just making phone calls, according to him, possibly got Everson Walls in and not Rondé Barber. I mean, if you're the Hall of Fame voter, you have to put some work into this. And I'm sure he does, but it doesn't seem like there's a lot of I don't know what goes on, but it just doesn't seem, if someone's doing that to your guy, don't you think you should step up and maybe call these guys back, and just right behind him and say, hey, did this guy call you about Everson Walls?
Yeah.
And then have a conversation with him. Like, I don't, it's a little disappointing to me, but in the end, I think Rondé's going to get in, and I hope Lynch gets in this year.
So, like you, I have no idea how that process works. However, listening to Ira talk about it, it seemed to me like this phone call was a very inappropriate phone call for people to receive.
It seemed out of the norm.
Yeah. So, the idea that I get what you're saying of, if Ira received this phone call, for him to maybe hop on the horn and call the guys and be like, hey, did you also get this? Okay, that's just not okay. I could see that process, but it also makes me wonder, and this is where, if we could sit across the table and have a conversation with Ira and figure out how this whole thing works, I think it'd be a fascinating conversation. But I wonder if there's almost a little bit of the culture of how the voters work, of you don't talk about it outside of the room.
Oh God,
you know what I'm saying? Or I don't know.
I know what you're saying, but yeah. I believe I'll eat my headset that I'm wearing if that's true.
Okay.
Hello?
No, okay.
I'm just saying, what we've heard a little bit about it, there's deals like, I'll vote for your guy, you vote for my guy in 2 years.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
There's all this, there's all this stuff that's going on. So if you think that they only talk about it when they get in that room, no way. No way.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I understand what you're saying. You're saying is there's sort of a decorum to it, and this guy might have broken it.
Sure. And the other thing too is, from what it sounds like from Ira, this wasn't a guy who was his Hall of Fame voter. That sounds like this was a third party person, called like a lobbyist, right? Like if you could equate it to that kind of a thing. Like this wasn't one congressman calling another congressman. This was a lobbyist calling around to all the different congressmen,
right.
But I get what you're saying of I guess the question to me is, would it have been couth, or would it have been acceptable for Ira to then turn around and call? I think he said there's 48 people, which that's a lot. Is Ira going to call 48 different people at whatever time o'clock at night? Yeah, but that's Ira though.
Well, that's
I
not
don't
acceptable to me
Yeah.
as a Bucs fan. If you're not going to give 100%, 110% to try to get your guys in, then give up the vote. I mean, let's call a spade here. The only reason Ira Kaufman's writing for Joe Bucs fan is so he could keep his Hall of Fame vote. He tried to go to the Times. They didn't hire him. I don't want to say they didn't want to, but they ended up not hiring him. And he needed a job locally to keep his Hall of Fame vote. That's why he writes for Joe Bucs fan. It's not like it was this great coup. If Ira Kaufman didn't have the Hall of Fame vote, I shouldn't say he wouldn't be writing for Joe Bucs fan, but he may not be writing locally at all. He might have went to take a job somewhere else with some other team. I understand, he's a little up there in age and maybe didn't want to move with his wife. He could have retired. The point being is he fought to keep that vote. And and from the stories that I hear from his mouth on his podcast, a lot of times I'm just like, sitting on the toilet reading stats isn't really enough for me.
Fair enough. I think this also goes back to a conversation, Ren, that you and I had last offseason. And this particular conversation has nothing to do with Ira himself, as much as it is just the process by which a person is voted into the Hall of Fame. Why this is left up to a group of media people. To me, it feels like they need to revamp the way they do Hall of Fame, and probably the people voting on the people to get in the Hall of Fame probably need to be some sort of a committee that's made up of current Hall of Famers.
Yeah,
that would just seem to make sense to me. And I'm sure there's probably some problem with that I just don't know of or I'm not thinking of. So if anyone has thoughts on that, I'd love to hear from you. It just, I don't know. The way that people vote to get in, and the idea that you have to make presentations and things like that, I don't know. Let the guys that are in the league vote for the Hall of Fame, or the guys who
played against these guys.
Yeah, something of that nature. Different than the NFL's top 100 players, where they just kind of ask these guys to fill out a card as they're shuffling through a line or something like that. Or even the Pro Bowl, where people are like, here's your ballot. All right, moving on.
Yeah, has that become more of a joke than anything right now?
Yeah, exactly.
Sort of how the process has gotten out, and you see things on Twitter, and it's like they don't even take it seriously. It's like it's a popularity contest, which stinks because you can leverage yourself as a player more money the more Pro Bowls you get, and it's just sort of an unfair process. But yeah, I agree. The way they do the now, let me say, if I was a Hall of Fame voter, I would not want it to be changed because I think it would be a lot of fun and it'd be cool to sit in there and listen to all these things. But the reason they give the presentation is, like I said earlier, because they don't know who these. I mean, they know who they are, but they don't know their stats. They didn't. They're not covering the Buck. They're covering, the Los Angeles Chargers, and they've done it for 20, 25 years. It's a flawed process, to be sure.
I agree. All right. Well, moving on from that, certainly well wishes to John Lynch, and hope that Ira can work his magic,
John
because
Lynch,
Ira's our guy. Whether we like the process or not, Ira is our guy, so good luck to him getting in John Lynch, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, go Ira.
Go Ira. All right. Well, with that, kind of in a similar thing, talking about voting, we talked about Pro Bowl voting, Ren. We all know that Gerald McCoy made it to the Pro Bowl once again, and that's one of those things that we were just kind of discussing of how people get in. I'm going to preface this by saying I absolutely believe that Gerald McCoy should be in the Pro Bowl, and I believe that his spot was well earned. I just wonder if Gerald McCoy had not already been in the Pro Bowl 5 times, with the way that the Buccaneers season went this year, if Gerald McCoy would have gotten voted in for the Pro Bowl again this year.
Right.
This might have been a little bit of a legacy pick. His name is out there. I think it's earned. I think it's very well earned. But we all know that there are players on the Buccaneers that also, I think, have earned a spot to the Pro Bowl, but they didn't make it because, honestly, they're with the Buccaneers in the season we have. Now, that being said, there was an article, Scott Smith on Buccaneers.com came out saying that depending on how these playoff games go, that we could actually wind up seeing 3 more Buccaneers in the Pro Bowl, in Quan Alexander, Cameron Brate, and Levante David, who would be getting in as alternates. So kind of a fun little bit of news, or maybe news, if we want to call it that.
Yeah. I mean, and he's right. People drop out because they just don't want to go. they make up injuries, or obviously if you're in the Super Bowl, because that's when it is, right? It's in between the championship games and the Super Bowl.
Right.
They move it a little bit, but that's usually when it is that off week. But now that it's in Orlando, it's much cheaper to get to. It's much cheaper to bring your family and your extended family, your nuclear family to, and it's in Orlando. So there is a lot more to do in Orlando than there is in Hawaii. I'm sorry. It's a beautiful place, but I have a beach 10 minutes from me, and I can do everything there that I can in Hawaii, except, for volcanoes and black sand beaches. That's about it. But, there's so much to do in Orlando. I don't think a lot of players are going to opt out of the Pro Bowl because they just don't want to make the trip. I think they see it as more of a vacation, and probably a vacation that's probably, I don't know, half of what it would cost to get all the extended family down there and sort of have a family vacation or a relatives and family vacation. We saw that last year. That not a lot of people opted out. The year before, when Jameis made his Pro Bowl, I think he was like the 6th quarterback on the list. And it just didn't happen last year,
right.
In Orlando. So, yeah, Scott Smith is right, but I really wouldn't sort of be betting on it if I was a Bucs fan, or if I was Cameron Quan or Levante, I wouldn't be definitely making hotel reservations.
Not yet, anyway.
Not yet.
Yeah. All right. With that, let's talk about somebody who is not going to the Pro Bowl, and most likely somebody who will not be back with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers next year. TJ Ward arrested for felony-level possession of weed the same week that our Attorney General is trying to crack down on the federal rules mandating marijuana. So, Ren, I'm going to guess that this falls into the who cares category for you. Would I be right?
Yeah. Hey, newsflash, professional athletes smoke pot. Whoa. Kidding.
Whoa.
Yeah,
Whoa.
Exactly. And the main reason, it's not that the amount or who the player is or that it's weed. It's just that he's not on the team.
Mm-hmm.
He's not on the team. So
he is until March, but he probably won't be after that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean,
he's not getting paid. We've already paid him his last check. So
exactly. So they'd have to re-sign him to get him back on the team. He was a disappointment. Obviously, he underwhelmed fans. I don't know how the coaching staff feels about him, but it seems to be the consensus out there. And once again, none of this comes from one Buck, is that he just won't be back. And, he's really – yes, he's on the team, but he's not on the team. It doesn't matter. It's like, okay, it's – I don't know really what else to say. It's just, who cares?
Mm-hmm. I don't know. The thing, I sent out this tweet on my own personal account the other day of, TJ Ward gets popped for felony possession of marijuana when Jeff Sessions is trying to crack down on this. However, what we forgot is that marijuana is actually a performance enhancing drug, so they're not going to be able to catch him.
Ba-dum-bum.
That would
remember that back in the Olympics when that snowboarder from Canada got busted for pot,
right?
And they busted him under. They took his medal because pot was under the performing enhancing.
Sure.
And everybody just laughed.
Right.
And after 3 days later, they gave him back his medal. They're like, "Yeah, you're right."
Yeah, you're. I think Robin Williams said the only way that pot is a performance enhancing drug if there's a big giant Twinkie at the end of the run.
That's a good point.
Get out of my way. All right, well, that's TJ Ward, a guy who not coming back. Is it safe to assign this guy a seat on a bus out of town, Ren?
I would.
Yeah.
Is it safe? Who knows? But
seat A4. That was Chris Conte's seat last year, and we got surprised. And I say pleasantly surprised. I was very okay with Conte this year. Now, let's talk about some guys who want or possibly are considering coming back to the Bucs this year, Ren.
All right.
Ryan Fitzpatrick has made a statement saying that he would like to be back in Tampa for another year. What do you think? You want old Fitzy back?
Even as much as I want desperately to see what Ryan Griffin can do with the ones, I feel like I've been talking about it for almost a calendar year now.
Because we have.
At least I have. I like Fitzpatrick's calming influence on Jameis.
Mm-hmm.
I think, we talked about sort of that silver lining. Like, what's the silver lining of Jameis missing these games? And it was almost to a man. Everyone said, well, maybe he will see how Fitzpatrick is poised. Doesn't get super revved up for games, and he's going to take care of the ball, and he's not going to try to, bounce it off the water closet onto the green to make a completion. And then when Jameis came back, it was almost instant where he was just a little calmer in the pocket. And then as the games went along, at least his ball security seemed to – the turnovers didn't really match it, but the eyeball test, the optics of it seemed like he was a little calmer. And
sure.
I feel that was a big factor in him putting up those 130 QBR ratings back-to-back weeks against division opponents. So – that's why I would like to see Fitzpatrick back. I wouldn't mind it.
You make him sound like he's Jameis's own personal calming goat.
Well, yeah. If you think about Hard Knocks, Jameis did that long, QB rhyme before the game, and Ryan just like, that might have been a little too long.
Right.
He's like, I liked it. And then he's telling him about the hot dogs, like, there's hot dogs in the back. It's just like, just sort of like, I don't mean to like grandfather grandkid, but just sort of that temperament of how your grandfather was when you were younger.
That wise guy, like sitting on his shoulder, like, it might have been too long. You think so? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
I got a little bit of advice for you there.
Right.
So I do like that, but also,
hey, by the way, I'm sorry to interrupt you on this. If anybody has an opportunity to go see Sinbad, if he's coming to a comedy club near you, you know who I'm talking about, right? The comedian Sinbad.
Yeah, sailed the seven seas.
No. We're talking about the guy from Different Strokes.
The stop motion skeletons with swords and shields, right?
No. Different Sinbad altogether. This is the one who wore MC Hammer pants back in the late 90s. This is the guy.
He fought Arnold Schwarzenegger for a doll in Jingle All the Way.
Yes, that one. He is also the one who played a genie in a movie called Shazam that never actually existed, but everybody remembers seeing it.
Yeah, you got me with that one.
That guy right there. Sinbad is on tour. The way his show goes right now is he's got his opening guy who's with him, a very funny guy named Anthony. And what happens is like Sinbad comes up and he sits down in a chair, kind of like Bill Cosby used to. And Anthony winds up coming back on stage, and they do the whole show together. And it's basically this idea of an older guy giving advice to a younger guy. And it is hilarious. Laughed so much, my abs started cramping up. Funny show, very, very funny show. Cool guy, by the way. Really chill dude. But if anybody has a chance to go see it, go do that. Because it somehow reminds me of Jameis and Ryan Fitzpatrick.
All righty.
Bring it back around.
Bring it back around. Yeah, and just to finish it off is, yes, I'm very desperate to see Ryan Griffin with the ones, but I wouldn't be mad if Ryan Fitzpatrick came back.
I'm with you. 100% I'm with you on everything you just said. Another person, though, that at least the Buccaneers want him back, and apparently the door is open. Brent Grimes possibly coming back to Tampa Bay. I got to admit, Ren, I was surprised to hear that he might even be open to it, because I really thought that regardless of whether Brent retired or he came back for another season, I just did not think it was going to be in Tampa. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I can understand your line of thinking, but they like Tampa. I mean Brent Grimes and Miko, his wife. Mm-hmm. They like Tampa. They like Mike Smith, the defensive coordinator. But really, it's all going to come down to money. And that's sort of, if you follow what's been going on, Brent Grimes is not on Twitter. And pretty much, she's sort of his mouthpiece of what's going on with Brent and the family. And she's pretty transparent about it. There's not a lot of of politicizing in her tweets. And basically she's saying now it's like, hey, if the Glazers step up, they want us back, we'll come back, and that's where it's at. So I honest right now, I think it's probably 85% he comes back. The only way he doesn't come back is he really wants to play. Like, he gets in his head like, I'm going to play this year, and he's thinking he's going to play for the Bucs, and then they just can't come to a deal about his amount. Mm-hmm. But he's so like, he's like, all right, I just want to give it. I've committed to this year. I want to do it this year, and then he goes somewhere else. But yeah, I think 85%. Brent Grimes comes back, and it's good news for Bucs fans, that's for sure.
Yeah. Speaking of Miko, she had one very mysterious tweet that I'm not sure what it means, but she quoted something that Pat Donovan said in a tweet, who said he just listened to their interview with Miko from New Year's Eve. Brent might have to come back to the Bucs just so we can do that more often. Something. And she said, I'm down if Mr. Glazer isn't BSing.
That's what she's saying. She's like, we'll stay. Like, me and Brent will stay if the Glazers are not BSing, as in they want him back.
Right.
And by that means she's saying
with the money, pony it up
with money. Yeah, like a competitive salary.
Right.
Not just, hey, we want you back, but hey, can you do us a favor, take a pay cut? No, that's not what they're looking for.
No. Right. That's what I mean. And I just but it makes me wonder if they haven't already floated a number out to him.
Maybe.
And they're just waiting on the official, again, I don't know that they can do this. I don't know if they can re-sign current I don't think they can do that until later. Their off-season rules and stuff are very weird.
For tampering?
Yeah.
But is it really tamper? I mean, I'm sure there's rules out there, and I'm probably it probably is. But if you haven't given him his last paycheck of the season yet, can you talk about it? I mean, is that really tampering? It's like, you're really, like you said, he's not a free agent. Like, Ward's not really off the team till March, right?
Right.
So when he goes in there with Cutter, who says Jason Light's not in there too, and they're like, Cutter said he gave him the sales pitch. He's like, I gave him the push. We want you back. In his exit presser, he said about Brent Grimes. Who says they didn't throw a number out? Mm-hmm. And if it is tampering, who's going to tell?
Right. All right. Well, there we go. Brent Grimes. Okay. There's a little bit of rumor. I'm not going to dive into it because there's so many. This person's out there. That person's out there. These people might become unrestricted free agents, so they might come back to the Bucs. I don't necessarily want to dive into all of that.
Right. It's too early.
Yeah, it's just too early for that. So I'll skip over some of those. All right, Ren, I've got one more for you, and this one actually comes from me a little bit. Right. So I put something out there on Twitter. I've received a little bit of blowback's not the right word, but it's had me busy in replies over the last 24 hours or so. Okay. And so I want to set this up a bit. Do you remember? Let's go all the way back to Coach Cutter's closing press conference.
Okay.
All right. He makes this little throwaway line where he says, heck, I think that our offensive line might be in the top half of the league. Mm-hmm. And
obviously it wasn't a throwaway line because a lot of people jumped on that.
A lot of people jumped on it. And I did too. In fact, I think the word that I used about that was Coach Cutter is delusional.
Yes.
He's delusional.
That was the word you used many times.
Yes, and I just did it twice right there. But I, being the type of person I am, and just with the integrity of the show that we try to produce here, I said, you know what? Let's go look it up and see where the offensive line actually landed. Now,
or you call the head coach batshit crazy, you might want to check up on it.
Right. Let's actually just see. Let's not further the narrative. Let's go look at the data and actually see what's what. Now, trying to find okay, there's a couple of problems with that. One of them being, in order to you could go back and watch all 17 weeks from all 32 teams and chart everything that happens with the offensive line and come up with your own comparison. But I'm not going to do that. I don't have time to do that. Honestly, I don't want to do that. But the good news is there's other people out there that do that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. You also have to come up with some sort of a metric to define what actually is success as an offensive line and what isn't success as an offensive line.
Place a grade.
Do what?
Place a grade.
There you go. And then the other thing that you have to figure out is okay, within the context of each individual play, it could be that the line actually did really well. It's just the running back did something really stupid and something got stuffed, or maybe the offensive line actually didn't do their job and the run got stuffed. Well, how do you know which one that is? So you can't just say, hey, let's take yards, for example, as a metric and use that to judge their effectiveness on. You've got to take it within context. And same thing like with passing plays, like on sacks. Maybe the quarterback just held onto the ball when he shouldn't have, and he took a sack, or something like that. Or it really could be the offensive line. So was looking around out there. There is a website called footballoutsiders.com, and they actually have a method for grading offensive lines, and they call it their adjusted line yards and their adjusted line sacks. And basically what it does is it takes a look at all of their plays, and it assigns a certain value based on what happened with that specific play. Okay, so it takes all those things into account. It has a little formula, and it computes them all, and it puts them out there. And here's what it came down to. This is the end of the year rankings for the offensive lines across the entire league. And lo and behold, you'll never guess where the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 2017 offensive line finished, both in run blocking and pass blocking. You got a 50-50 shot here.
27th.
No.
29th?
No, that would be the bottom half of the league, Ren.
35th.
There's only 32 teams in the league.
Oh, you said that he was delusional. So.
I did say he was delusional, but turns out Coach Cutter, while I'm sure he didn't actually have this stat, he just said it was kind of something in his head. He was right, Ren. He was right. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers offensive line finished 16th in run blocking and also in pass protection. 16th on both sides of the ball. Using this adjusted line ratio, which I found really amazing, because technically that makes the Tampa Bay Buccaneers offensive line in the top half of the league. Just barely, but they are technically in the top half of the league. So
last guys on the elevator.
Right. Now, I want to clarify something when I say this. So, well, first of all, I also put this out as a tweet, and some people said that I was pandering or that I was maybe a little too generous with my words. But I said, listen, I'd like to formally apologize to Coach Cutter, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, for calling him delusional, because turns out he was right. But I also got people blowback saying, oh, listen, the communication stunk, the offensive line kept getting manhandled and blown up, and they weren't doing well. And you know what? That being the truth, because I think that's the truth, the offensive line did not play terribly well this year. They just didn't. But according to the data, according to the ranks, the data.
I'm just continuing that riff as well.
They finished 16th. Now, just because they finished 16th does not mean that they played well. What it tells, first of all, that means they're very much in the middle of the league.
Very much so.
They're very much in the middle of the league. But also, what it also might tell me is that offensive line play as a whole this year might not have just been very good. Because if that was in the top half of the league, what we witnessed for 16 games in our team this year, holy hell, what did 16 other teams who were worse than us experience?
Yeah, that is not something that has not been tossed around about how the offensive line play in the NFL is desperate need of young, new, good talent. Mm-hmm. That's for sure. But so we apologize. You got your little feelings hurt because you're an offensive lineman, and you thought you knew better than the head coach of the Buccaneers, and called him a wackadoodle. Said he had bats in the belfry, and then and by one, and he just,
just barely.
All right, Ferry's leaving.
Uh-huh.
Ferry's leaving. First half, the good offensive line, Ferry is leaving. All right, you guys can go. Like, so close. You're
right.
So close to being right. Oh, well.
Yeah. Now, you want me to blow your mind just a little bit more, Ren? According to the numbers, according to the same set of data, the offensive line actually improved over last year.
Oh.
Yeah. Because last year, now we were the same in pass blocking. We were 16th last year. We were 16th again this year.
You think that's because of Peyton Barber?
It's possible because last year in run blocking, Tampa Bay Buccaneers finished. Wait a minute, where is it? No, I'm looking at this year. Finished 21st in the league, and our adjusted yard lines we were 0.05 better in yards. The average for the yards.
So J.R. Sweezy isn't a bust, and the rotation of Pamfield and Smith was actually a good thing?
No, that is not actually. That is not what this says, and not what this suggests.
That's how I read it.
That is okay. So here's one of the things that they do is they actually break down how you ranked going off the left tackle, going off the right tackle, and going up the middle between the guards in the center. And would you like to know where our guards and center ranked in their pass or in their blocking?
I'm going to.
It was not 16th. I'll tell you that.
Okay. And this is a 1 through 32 ranking.
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna say
it's higher than you think.
Just
okay. Go ahead.
I'm gonna get this.
Okay.
29th.
Nope.
Are you sure? Look again.
Positive. I'm staring at it right now.
What they rank?
In fact, I can tell you 29th was the New York Jets.
No one cares. What were they?
17th. Going up the middle. But with that stupid ass dumb
so thing,
rotating thing. No, I'm not saying it was a good thing. They're still 17th. That's not good.
What was it last year? Hello?
13th. They were 13th in the league last year going up the middle.
So Joe Hawley's a better center than Alley? According to the data.
He's a better guard than Sweezy.
There you go. He makes up for it for the Sweezy. And Evan Smith brought down Kevin Bamfield because he only got to play half the time.
Uh-huh. You want me to give you another fun number?
Is anyone still listening out there?
I don't know.
By the way?
I don't know. But here's this. Let's talk about Donovan Smith, one of our favorite whipping boys on the offensive line.
Yep.
Last year, he ranked 24th in yards that went up his side. This year, he ranked 10th. Last year, DeMar Dotson on his side, with Gosder Sherilis mixing in there somewhere, ranked 27th. This year, they ranked 4th in the league.
So Benenoch had a great...
Yeah. So anyway, all of that to say, it was just a very flooring, jarring number.
Okay, before you go away,
okay.
Can you tell me pass protection as far as Donovan Smith last year to this year?
Let me see. No, I cannot. That number is not. It's not broken down like that on this chart.
It doesn't rank individual players for pass protection?
If I'm reading it right, no, it doesn't.
Sorry, everybody. I was really looking forward.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. Yeah, no, it's what I just quoted you of the individual players is it's how well the team performs on runs, going up the middle, going off the left, and going out the right.
Gotcha. I see. So it's not Donovan Smith. It just he happens to play on the left.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
Exactly.
All right.
Exactly. They lump the guards and the center together as one because it's so hard to tell, going one way or the other. But they do give the right tackle and the left tackle their own numbers. So,
righto.
Now, the one thing that this doesn't do is this doesn't give us the difference between what were the numbers when Doug Martin was starting versus when Peyton Barber was starting towards the end of the year. It doesn't break those out. So
it's on a week-to-week breakdown?
No, yeah. This is your overall, for the entire year, what happens. But, because of the way they do the adjusted line yardage formula, and if you want to, you go to footballoutsiders.com and look up their stats for their offensive line. It'll explain it to you in more detail. But I like how it does that because it takes away the outliers of what could happen if a running back just has a really good play or has a really stupid play, or if a quarterback has a really good play or a really stupid play. And actually, it evens it out in a good formula and a good algorithm to be able to actually let you judge what the offensive line has been doing. So yeah. Now that said, do I feel like George Warhop should stay as the offensive line coach? He gets a little bit more breathing room with me, but I still would like to see a new offensive line coach. If you're given my druthers, I'd still like to see that. I definitely think that the offensive line needs to improve. And I'll say there is another podcaster who contacted me who said, I would like to talk to you about this more. And so who knows, maybe we'll be talking about this a little bit more in depth.
Who is it?
Stay tuned. We'll tell you when that possibly may or may not ever happen. We'll find out.
It's because he just wants to talk to you.
I don't know. We'll find out.
Are you just gonna pop up on someone's podcast mysteriously?
It's possible. Stay tuned.
Yeah.
Stay tuned. All right.
What are you going to do?
All right, Ren. Well, that's all the news that I had for this week coming out. Did you have anything before we sign off here?
Yes, I would like to go over 10 minutes worth of stats about the speed and quickness of the water boy, how fast they fill their Gatorade bottles, and if it helps and hurts the defense's flow.
It matters.
Especially in the month of December.
It all matters.
All matters. All matters. No, I'm good, bro. I'm good. I think we have covered pretty much everything that's come out that I can think of.
Sure. All right. Well, with that, my friends, I will remind you once again, head over to our Twitter page, twitter.com/thepewtercast, and you will be able to find the link for the Pewtercast Awards show. We'll have that up there, and you guys can go vote. Try to vote as many times as you want. I'm not sure if it'll let you or not. I'm not sure how it tracks all that kind of stuff, but you guys can go do that. That'll be live. If you guys want to get in touch with us about anything we have talked about here on the show today, you can email us at thepewtercast@gmail.com. Find us at the Pewtercast on Twitter or facebook.com/Pewtercast. Ren, why don't you tell the people out there where they can find you on the internet?
Best way to find me is on Twitter, at Rendax, REN_DAXT. I'm always down to talk Buccaneers football. I don't like that. I won't be doing that again.
And if you'd like to find me, you can find me at Brent Allen Live on Twitter, Facebook, and all the social medias. And once again, the show is at the Pewtercast across all the things, and at thepewtercast@gmail.com. Well, Ren, this starts our off-season run, which means we are now at an every 2-week clip, unless something fun pops up. So you guys can certainly stay tuned for that. But until next time, it's going to be a couple weeks. We'll see you. So until then, we'll say, go Bucks.
2 weeks. Ugh.